Good morning. It'll just be a few moments before we get started. Good morning. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm Sunnyvale Mayor Larry Klein, and thanks for joining me again this week. Happy April and happy Good Friday for those who are celebrating. I hope everyone's had a good week. This is my 55th installment of my weekly virtual office hours address. People really say they appreciate these weekly live stream addresses and hearing from their mayor. So I'll continue to do these through the end of shelter in place and probably a lot longer. We've now reached 382 days after the March 16th, 2020 county health order started all the shelter in place and in a real attempt to slow the spread of COVID-19. Since that declaration, a lot has happened. A lot happens almost every day, it seems like. A year ago, I thought it'd be really great to convert my weekly office hours at Bean Scene on downtown Murphy every Friday morning into a live stream address. And I haven't missed a Friday since this began. And, it's been really good because, it's allowed me to reach a lot more people than whoever would show up at my Friday morning office hours, but allows me to give you some updates, answer some of your questions, and just provide some general words of encouragement. From my standpoint, it's been really fulfilling as far as hearing from people and passing out those positive messages and keeping people up to date on an ever-changing landscape of what's going on. But I just want to thank you for allowing me to continue to represent you and work for Sunnyvale during sometimes difficult times, but we're hopefully moving to some much better times. I hope everyone's doing well, staying healthy. Remember to take care of yourself, both physically and mentally. And keep following the county health orders. We all need to do whatever we can do to stop the spread of the virus. Washing your hands, don't touch your face, just reducing the number of people that you're coming in contact with. But of course, maintain a safe social distance while you're out. Wear your mask, and of course, get your vaccination when it's your time, and we'll be talking about vaccinations a little bit later. I Let's go ahead and get to what's been happening at the federal, state, county, and city level over the last 2 weeks. So last Tuesday, the state declared that several counties were moving from the red tier to the orange tier, and that was San Francisco, Santa Clara, and Marin counties. And so last Wednesday, we moved into the orange tier, and that changed everything quite a bit from moving from red to orange. The biggest thing was, retail stores are now at 100% capacity, but indoor dining is now at 50% capacity or 200 people, whichever is fewer. But that's been really important for some of the stores that were a little from the restaurants that didn't want to open up indoors until they could basically seat enough people to make that useful. Indoor gyms, pools, fitness centers are allowed to now operate at 25% capacity. Movie theaters are at 50% capacity or 200 people, whichever is fewer. Zoos, museums, aquariums are at 50% capacity. But we need to still take the same precautions when you're out, when you're going in, wearing your mask, when you're indoors, washing your hands, maintaining that safe social distance. But things are changing. A lot of restaurants are now doing indoor dining. The movie theater is open and providing food, so you can go to AMC and see a movie now. So definitely things are opening up, and we'll see, our numbers have kind of leveled off a little bit. We'll see how quickly we'll conceivably be moving into the yellow tier. But right now, being in orange is actually a lot better for the small businesses that really are the lifeblood of our city. Uh, Last Wednesday, Governor Newsom announced that the new Attorney General that would be taking the place of now Senator Padilla was Rob Bonta, and Bonta was the first Filipino American in the California legislature. So he was elected in 2012, and he was also so he currently was representing the cities of Oakland, Alameda, San Leandro in District 18. So he's assembly member in District 18. Before that, he actually served as deputy city attorney in San Francisco. So it was good to see that position replaced. Last Thursday morning, Governor Newsom had a press conference and mainly talked about the continual constraints on manufacturing supply. But the biggest thing is he announced modifying the eligibility requirements. And so as of yesterday, April 1st, anyone 50 and older is eligible to get the vaccine. And 2 weeks from today, or 2 weeks from yesterday, April 15th, everyone 16 and over will be eligible to get the vaccine. So it's really, I think it's been really good, as people get the vaccines. The biggest issue, of course, is the manufacturing supply. And conceivably, that manufacturing supply is supposed to be increasing over the next week or two, and especially over the next month or two. But right now, that's been kind of the biggest drawback as far as trying to get vaccines to people. And we've had some positive indications as far as our positivity from COVID testing is down to about 2%. And the governor's still on their way to defining what a green tier looks like after we get through the yellow tier. That hasn't been done yet, but we're on that way of figuring out what a new normal really looks like. And schools continue to open. A lot of Sunnyvale schools have opened in the last few weeks. Of the 11,000 schools in the state, about 9,000 have either opened, have a date to open, and whether or not that's hybrid or a partial. A lot of them are opening later, especially like from Sunnyvale standpoint. And I've been talking to some of the school board members as well as the superintendent of schools. Definitely they're opening up, a grade a week or so. So by the end of this month, all the grades should be open. And let's see. And then last weekend there were, of course, several rallies on anti-Asian hate, and those have been happening around the Bay Area, around the state, around the country. And we'll actually be having several this weekend. So if you're wanting to attend, there's one in Cupertino on Saturday, and there's one in Mountain View on Sunday. So that I think is really important from just raising awareness. For one thing, the Asian fear, and this has kind of been bubbling up over the last year or so. But seeing some of the hate crimes that have been happening around California, around the nation in the last few months, and it's being making sure that people aren't bystanders, making sure that people stand up when they see injustice, and I think that's the critical thing. And we'll be talking about an event that Sunnyvale will be having next week in just a little bit. And then on Monday of this week, Sunnyvale Planning Commission approved the special development permit for two 7-story buildings, office buildings, actually mixed use, at where the Macy's is. So along Washington, there'll be 7-story buildings with certain setbacks and all that. And I've seen the design, and the design is actually very nice. But it'll all be retail along the bottom floor, much like Murphy Avenue, much like we've done around the rest of the City Line downtown development. And that'll include about 50,000 square feet of retail, 23,000 in flexible space, and an additional 37,000 square feet of shared services. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. There should be a demolition event sometime in the next month or two, as far as the Macy's building, now that that's been approved. That'll also have 2 stories or 2 levels of underground below grade parking, and then it'll also kind of extend Francis, where right now South Francis going from the Caltrain station basically dead ends into Murphy. That'll be made into a pedestrian walkway. So there'll be cars as well as kind of a pedestrian zone there. And that'll kind of lead into an atrium where the residential will lead into Redwood Square. So a lot going on as far as the City Line development, but that was approved at the Sunnyvale Planning Commission this past Monday. On Tuesday, council met, and we had a very busy evening, a closed session, and then we had about 2 hours to talk about Moffett Park and discuss potential land use concepts that have been laid out there. And I was really happy to see, one of the things that's being done is talking, bringing together all the developers and looking at what could be done if they created, a green belt, how they created, transportation, so biking and walking areas that would kind of crisscross the whole Moffett Park. Also looking at, from a land use standpoint, where housing could go. And none of this is firm yet, but we've given direction to at least evaluate from an EIR standpoint what housing would look like. And how much housing conceivably could be put in Moffett Park. It's surprising to see how much area Moffett Park actually has. So then from an acreage standpoint, and then overlay, there's from a presentation standpoint, it's actually good to see how big that area is in comparison to downtowns and like the financial district of San Francisco. So it actually has quite a large area that could be utilized, but I'm very happy to see some of the designs as far as creating neighborhoods, creating mixed use areas where you'd have retail, where you'd have housing, and be able to walk to some of the office buildings that are there. So it's been actually good from that standpoint to see how that's progressed. It's been good to hear from our residents, as well as kind of give general feedback to the consultants on on what can be done in Moffett Park. So we'll see where that goes. We'll be doing another meeting in the upcoming month to talk about kind of further direction as far as that EIR is concerned. And then as far as general business, we started the evening with several special orders of the day. April is Fair Housing Month. We also have Library Week coming up, and we'll talk about that a little bit. And then, of course, Library Week is April 4th through 10th. So there'll be, so next week there'll be all kinds of events from the library. It's all virtual and all that, but it's story time, and I read a book, so you can see the mayor doing a mayor story time next week. But there's lots of events that the library is putting on. And if you go to the library website, you can take a look at that full list. April is also Poetry Month, and so I had Catherine Lee, which is a sophomore at Fremont High School, come in and read one of her poems. And it's actually good to go on a little bit lighter standpoint, but I've been a big advocate of the arts, whether or not that's the written word from a poetry standpoint, or sculpture and other types of art. Murals are really good to kind of spread throughout the community, but it was good to actually celebrate Poetry Month, and so that was how we started the evening. We adopted a resolution to denouncing anti-Asian hate, and so that was and that was to a certain degree a continuation of what we've been doing. Last year we did a resolution against xenophobia after similar sorts of incidents, because of what some of the national rhetoric that would have been happening, but also what had been happening in our local community. And then a few years ago we just basically affirmed our statement of values, and affirming that Sunnyvale is a very diverse city, and ultimately we're better because of the diversity. So it's kind of a continuation of that. We also, Sunnyvale, the council established a public process for redistricting. So this is the ongoing effort to deal with, first, last year we approved splitting Sunnyvale into 6 districts. Now we need to go through the process because we have the 2020 census, and we won't be getting that data until the end of September, which is a lot later than what we were hoping to do, but we needed to define what that redistricting process will be. And so ultimately we finalized that ordinance, and the committee is made up of 7 members plus 6 alternates, and we'll be starting to take those applications to be on that committee later this month. The end of May will be the deadline for applying. So we still have quite a bit of time, and I'll give more information when that's available. And then finally, one of the things that we did was we approved the distribution of the CDBG grants, so the Community Development Block Grants. And this is one of the things that we get from the federal government on a yearly basis. And it's all based upon our population. That's why, making sure that everyone filled out their census was critical, because it really meant that depending upon how many residents we had, it was our portion of these community development block grants. And what we do is we take these funds and we fund local nonprofits and efforts to help serve our underserved and other programs. So one of which was the Ravenswood Family Health Network, and it was for COVID-19 testing and vaccine administration, and that was $200,000. The Silicon Valley Independent Living Center that assisted people with disabilities received $90,000. We Hope, which is a nice program that does portable showers, laundry, restrooms, case management at Trinity Church, received $50,000. And of course, Sunnyvale Community Services, which has been doing a fantastic thing as far as rent relief, utility relief, and food during COVID. They received $775,000. So it was important to lay this money out. I think it's always good to well, for one thing, we always get a lot more applications. We were at least everyone except for Sunnyvale Community Services received their full grant request. Sunnyvale Community Services, we've been doing additional funding to them throughout the year, over the past year, especially during COVID. But it's really good to see how these different nonprofits, profits, and service organizations are helping those in need on a year in, year out basis. And then on Wednesday of this week, President Biden proposed his $2 trillion infrastructure bill. And there's a lot of portions to that bill, from about $650 billion towards true infrastructure, which I'll say is, roads and bridges and all that, to broadband, making sure that people, those in the rural community have access to broadband is really critical, especially during COVID when so many people had to work remotely, or the students, having to try to do remote learning. It's really shown some of the digital divide issues that we've had, in our city, in our country. And one of the things that we did from a city standpoint is provide wireless access points, provide Chromebooks from our libraries. The schools have also did a lot of Chromebooks to the students that needed them. And a lot of our tech companies stood up, and Google gave $100,000 to Sunnyvale Education Foundation to help fund Chromebooks to our children. That's really important, from a big standpoint, is so that transportation infrastructure, I think $620 billion. The quality of life at home, $650 billion, and that's dealing with affordable housing, commercial buildings, and other infrastructure. And then it's a mixture of caregiver and elderly benefits, and people with disabilities. And finally, of course, research and development and manufacturing. So it's a mixture of things from an infrastructure standpoint. But I think what's most important from our city standpoint is that infrastructure, as far as roads and other similar infrastructure. And I've already been working with Congressman Khanna and Congressman Eshoo, trying to get a list of local projects, that's like grade separation at Evelyn and Mary, or Evelyn and Sunnyvale. So trying to make sure that those are getting done. The undergrounding, so there'll be an undercrossing at Bernardo that'll be going under the Caltrain tracks, that's in the works. There's the Stevens Creek Trail extension. So there's lots of infrastructure projects for bike and ped and cars that really would make a difference as far as our community is concerned. Especially the grade separation designs and implementation need to get done as we electrify our Caltrain, and making sure that conceivably high-speed rail goes through, that we don't have those intersections where cars and trains have to meet in any way. So that's one of the long-term efforts as far as a city standpoint, and working with our congressional representatives, trying to make sure that their list of projects has projects that will support our local cities as well. And then let's see, on Thursday, of course, COVID eligibility increased to those 50 years old and older for Sunnyvale. And for Sunnyvale, for the county, for California. And if you want to find out where to sign up, you need to go to sccfreevax.org, and it will list county locations. It'll list the healthcare providers. It'll also list a lot of the pharmacies, and a lot of the pharmacies are getting their doses directly from the federal government. So as opposed to the state and dealing with Blue Shield, who's doing with their own allotment of vaccines, and we've had a lot of, a lot of advocacy trying to make sure that Santa Clara County is getting its fair share of the vaccines over the last few weeks. And we finally signed something with with the state, much like LA did, saying that we don't need to use the My Turn system. We've heard, so Blue Shield and the state have been running the My Turn system, and definitely, LA County was the first one to kind of deal with partnering with Blue Shield on how some of the vaccines are administered, but also part of that is making sure that they're able to deal locally with where some of the vaccines go, but also not having to use the state's My Turn system, which hasn't been hasn't been working, let's say, the best as it should have been. And then on Thursday, so yesterday also, Governor Newsom was finally qualified to get his vaccine, being 50 years or older, and he got his vaccine, Johnson & Johnson vaccine, in LA County, and had his normal press conference, although I'd say the number of press conferences has dropped off a little bit. And so Mayor Garcetti was there and commented about the need for equity, of course. The governor basically, said that, we're doing a lot better than we were, as far as a lot better than a lot of the states, continue to push the number of vaccines that had been administered by our state has surpassed, a lot of the countries around the world. Of course, you look at our population, California has a larger population than a lot. And we're doing okay, and we'll be talking about how we compare to other states as far as getting people vaccinated. And then Thursday afternoon, county health met, and they raised the concern about local variants. So we have seen some of the more contagious variants now in Northern California, and we're doing okay as far as getting doses. Last week we only had about 58,000 doses administered, and it's all based upon vaccine availability. And that 58,000 isn't including Kaiser or PAMP. We should have about 72,000 doses available in the upcoming week. So hopefully we'll be increasing, but it's important that people get vaccinated, but when they can, but continue to do the measures of wearing your mask and staying safe, doing social distancing when you're out. The state adding eligibility yesterday meant that about 370,000 additional people are eligible within our county. That being said, it's all dependent upon the number of vaccines available. And so, from that standpoint, there are a lot of people just waiting for those vaccines and getting in. The big message is be patient. We don't have the vaccines for everybody yet. From a positive standpoint, the vaccinations and just natural immunity of people that have been previously exposed to virus has been showing a decreasing rate of people being positive with COVID-19. Please get tested if you can. That was one of the other messages, is we've seen, people thinking that, okay, the vaccination because of vaccinations and decreasing rates, people are lowering their let's say safety a little bit, and not getting tested to see if they've been exposed or might have been exposed. It's important to continue to get those testing. And so let's go ahead to get to the weekly numbers as far as testing, hospitalization, and vaccinations. So from a national standpoint, we've now surpassed 30.3 million cases. That's about 500,000 cases in the last week of people testing positive with COVID-19. And we've surpassed 154 million vaccines that have been administered, and about 550,000 deaths, all because of COVID. So, things, we're getting the vaccines out there. We've surpassed the 100 million, and we're on our way to 200 million. But definitely we are still having people that are dying because of COVID. So please be careful, whatever you can do. From a state standpoint, we've had 3.5 million people that have tested positive for COVID. but we're only averaging about 2,200 cases a day now. So things are looking a lot better as far as that's concerned. And California's had 58,000 fatalities. So it's still a very dangerous virus. Please do what you can to make sure that you get vaccinated. From a state standpoint, 18 million, about 18 million people have been vaccinated. And when you start comparing that to percentage of population, we're about number 24 on states with residents with at least one dose. So that's at 27%. And we were 27 last week, so we're seeing that go down. As far as states that with residents fully vaccinated, we're still at around 38. 38th place, where we were 40th last week. So we're going down a little bit. I think as the Johnson & Johnson vaccine continues to roll out, I think that will be the best way to have more and more people vaccinated as quickly as possible. Cases from people infected continue to trend downward from a county standpoint. We've had 114,000 cases. That's up only about 700 from a week ago. So, we continue to go down, down, down. 2,000 about 2 months ago, 1,000 about, a month ago. So, and then we've had 1,942 deaths, and we've had about 8 in the last week, and currently have 105 people that are hospitalized for COVID. And then by city, San Jose is up about another 500 since last week. So they've had 75,000 and about 75,500 cases of COVID. And from a Sunnyvale standpoint, we've had about 60 additional cases. So we're about 5,300 cases of people that have been infected by COVID. So for me, I continue to do a lot of advocating on the city's behalf, a lot of it around, COVID testing and tracing. The county pop-up van will be here on the 2nd and 4th Mondays from 9:30 to 4 p.m. And so so April 12th and April 26th, they'll be back here. And if you want to get tested, go to sccfreetest.org to sign up and get your appointment. And then El Camino Hospital is also offering COVID testing, and so they'll be at Murphy Park actually this upcoming Tuesday. So Tuesday, April 6th from 8:30 to 1 p.m. And you can go to the El Camino healthcare website to sign up, but it's for anybody who lives, works, or goes to school in the El Camino Healthcare District. So definitely, consider doing that. And then, of course, from a vaccine standpoint, as I kept saying, go get your vaccine if you're qualified. sccfreevax.org has a listing of all the different healthcare providers, the county, and of course the different pharmacies that where you can sign up and get tested or get your vaccine. And so I've actually signed up for today. So today, later today, I'll be getting the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. And that's all through, CVS and Walgreens, I think is one of the best places where you can sign up right now and try to, I've had multiple friends be able to get onto the website early and sign up, and I'll finally get vaccinated later today. So I'll tell everyone next week how that's gone, what effects, what the side effects were, if any. But from that standpoint, I'm happy to get that vaccine. Be happy to start being able to meet people face to face, and feel a little bit safer as far as being out in the community. Let's go ahead and move to some upcoming events. So next Wednesday, of course, as I was saying, so next Wednesday, April 7th from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m., Sunnyvale will be having its Unity event for AAPI Solidarity. And so because of the increase in anti-Asian hate incidents, around the country and, and around the Bay Area since the COVID-19 pandemic began, and especially some of the high profile hate crimes that we've seen, in the Bay Area, the mass shootings in Atlanta. I thought it was really important to have a unity event, much like we had, 2 years ago. We had a unity event because of a hate crime that happened in our city, which was kind of a Muslim hate crime, and brought everyone together almost about 2 years ago, with just in just a few weeks. It'll be 2 years ago, and this will be basically a day of virtual action, an evening of virtual action. And so from that standpoint, it'll be a virtual gathering where we'll hear from a lot of our Asian American and Pacific Islander community. And it's just hard to see, such bigotry and hatred. It isn't really new in the Bay Area and around the country. Sunnyvale, and from a Sunnyvale standpoint, it is a melting pot of a lot of different cultures and backgrounds and people, but I think we're actually a better community because of that. And it's good that we're pulling together to acknowledge and discuss ways to address hate and bigotry, to make sure that you stand up when you see injustice, and just being an ally to everyone in your community. So, and we'll have, it'll start off with some poems, and we'll have a panelist of speakers. So County Supervisor Otto Lee, past mayor and council member, Richard Kanda from the Asian Law Alliance, Sarita Kohli from the Asian Americans for Community Involvement will be there, Jeff Rosen, our county district attorney, and of course Chief No, our chief of Sunnyvale's public safety, will also be there. So it'll be good. And then we'll also have, some listening section where people can tell their concerns, so call in and voice some of their concerns and how they feel about their community. It's a time of healing and making sure that people aren't afraid for living in our community. And I think that's really important. So hopefully you'll be able to join us. If you want more information, you can go to sunnyvale.ca.gov/unity, and how you can register to speak. There's also a Zoom link if you just want to talk, or if you just want to listen and watch the event online. So definitely join us if you can. And then as far as later this month, Earth Week is April 17th through the 24th. And this year we're throwing a big virtual celebration, because last year's celebration kind of we had all kinds of plans, and then COVID happened, and we weren't able to pivot as quickly as we could to have those remote events. But there'll be 9 different events scheduled for that week. You can go. There'll be and it's mainly around, this year's kind of focus is food, and how we celebrate food from a green standpoint. So there'll be things on composting, food cycling. It's kind of a gourmet Earth Week. So of the different events, there'll be student trivia. So grades 8 through 12 can have a youth climate action trivia. You can watch the mayor and city staff compete on a plant forward cooking for the climate event. And so that'll all be done, of course, on induction stoves. And then there's a speaker event on Climate Reality Project, and talking about what you can do to help. Chef Tony from Goombas will actually be teaching kids how to make their own pizza. And also there'll be, growing your own food. So there's lots of different events throughout that week. You can learn about electric vehicles, composting. And so from that standpoint, definitely look online, and see and sign up to join one of the different online events. And then as far as upcoming council meetings, So April 6th, so next Tuesday night, Council will direct staff to develop an ordinance to reduce use of single-use plastic foodware and condiment containers. And so this is, one of our climate action plan goals is to try to reduce single-use plastic foodware. And one of the biggest issues that we've seen, is plastics and how those are used, and the basically the difficulty of trying to do recycling of those plastics. That it's harder and harder to find outlets that will take plastics recycling, but also it's those single-use plastic foodware. And I've been working with several of the state legislators trying to get a reduction on single-use plastics as much as possible. But so we'll be doing a local ordinance, and so this will be come back to council, and we'll give them kind of direction on going off and defining what that ordinance is. And then on April 20th of this month, we'll basically define define a preferred alternative for the environmental impact report for the Mary Avenue overcrossing. And so this has been, the Mary Avenue overcrossing has been on the books since the 70s as far as another path into Moffett Park. And ultimately, the EIR is going to study a lot of different designs from no bridge at all to a bike and ped bridge only, to bike and ped and shuttle, to bike, ped, and cars, and conceivably even 4 lanes of cars, 2 in each direction. And so from a council standpoint, and because of some changes with CEQA, from an EIR, council has to choose a preferred concept. And we'll be studying all 5 of those concepts. We haven't decided on any one of them, but we need to choose a preferred concept kind of from an EIR, draft EIR standpoint. So that'll be going forward on the 20th. And then that's April 20th. And then May 20th, kind of looking forward to next month, is our all-day budget session. And so this will be a final update on what our outlook is for the budget for 2021, 2022. And when we defined this year's budget, we basically did some very difficult cuts. We froze a lot of positions. We cut back on water and other things, at our parks. We cut back on tree trimming, and so we'll see from a services standpoint, whether or not we'll be cutting into those services. We're getting quarterly updates on where we stand from a budgetary standpoint and revenue standpoint. TOT, transportation occupancy tax for hotels, is still way down. Sales tax is not as bad as we thought it was going to be. So hopefully we'll see things are better than we hoped. We'll see where we stand in May. The other positive thing is, of course, we have some federal funds coming. So, we have about $29 million that'll be, between this year and next year. So that'll be given in 2 tranches to the city. And we're still trying to fully, figure out what all the restrictions are on how that money is spent. But, those one-time funds will help backfill some of the reserves that we ate into in this past year. So from that standpoint, things we'll see where we stand from a budget in next month. But in Sunnyvale is a very well-run city. From a budgetary standpoint, we're always doing, we do a 20-year plan from a budget, and we do, and by charter, we have to have a 10-year balanced budget. So when we don't make quick changes, because you start looking at service changes, and those service changes over 20 years can be a lot bigger than what was expected. Okay, let's go ahead and get to our weekly questions. Let's see. Sherry asked, when is the Sunnyvale Library going to be open to the public? So, for a long time now during COVID, we've had basically the library on the plaza service. So people can go pick up books, they can reserve them online. There's also was basically kind of book bags for parents. So if they had kids that wanted to basically have picture books and story time books, there were basically books put together by our librarians so that that'd be easily picked up and checked out. There was checkouts, of course, of Chromebooks and Wi-Fi, hotspots, things of that nature. You could actually get, sign up to get your library card and all that from the plaza. But part of moving into the orange tier is the concept that we'll start opening up additional public spaces inside. And so the Sunnyvale Public Library will reopen for in-building services on Tuesday, April 13th. So a week from this coming Tuesday. And one of the big things about that is they'll restrict the number of people that will be allowed inside, but and the computer systems won't be open for long term, people sitting there and all that, but you will be able to finally go inside the library to do a little bit of browsing, and that'll of course be limited, but it's making sure that we start opening up some of those services that people have become dependent upon. We still have tons of online capability and looking at either checking out books or doing materials, whether or not it's music, CDs, DVDs. You can do all that online, but now you also be able to go into the library. Vicky asked, how do we accommodate, this was several weeks ago. Vicky asked, how do we accommodate seniors who have no computers and do not know how to use a computer? Is the information that I'm presenting in my mayor's address available on TV? Well, that was a great question. So I ended up reaching out to KMVT about a week and a half ago. And KMVT is our local public access channel, channel 15. And starting last Saturday, my Friday virtual morning office hour address will now be broadcast Saturday nights at 7 p.m. going forward. So the first broadcast was last Saturday at 7 p.m. and it'll be broadcast that, Friday's broadcast will always be broadcast the following day. So Saturday night at 7 p.m. you'll see a rebroadcast of this session. So for those who have friends who don't like to use Facebook or don't like to get on computers to try to find videos, they can now turn on their TV on Saturday nights and see the mayor talk about some of the updates as far as vaccines and testing, as well as just answer some of the questions that are happening on what's happening here in Sunnyvale. Robert asked, does going to the orange tier mean businesses are going to welcome customers to use their toilets? Definitely, I've reached out to a lot of different restaurants, and when it was only al fresco dining, had been a lot of questions about allowing people to come inside of restaurants. Now that we're in orange tier and restaurants can have 50% capacity indoors, a lot of restaurants, have all the ones that I checked with are allowing residents or customers, we do have a lot of people visiting from surrounding cities, are allowed to use their restrooms. So definitely that is allowed for most of the restaurants, if not all the restaurants that are allowing indoor dining. Cynthia asked, will there be an art and wine festival this year? And that was one of the things that we had to cancel last year. Because of COVID, and lots of outdoor events. We didn't have our summer music, but events are being planned for late in the summer and in the fall. As far as music is concerned, as far as art and wine, the Chamber is planning for an art and wine weekend on October 2nd and 3rd. So definitely it'll be most likely toned down a little bit. We'll see where we stand in the fall. But definitely an event is being planned, and we'll see how that goes with construction that's happening downtown and everything else. But there will be an event this year, and I know a lot of people look forward to that event every year as far as coming to Sunnyvale. So keep your fingers crossed on what that'll look like, but there will be something. Several people asked, I love the outdoor seating on Murphy Avenue. Will it continue and or be allowed after COVID-19 is over? Definitely, uh, as far as I see it, this will continue for a long time. I took the idea of closing Murphy Avenue to the Downtown Association in January of 2020, and then of course, and they were evaluating it, and then of course COVID happened, and when al fresco dining was allowed, when people were, when the state and the county put in, directions that, well, you can't do indoor dining, but outdoor dining's allowed. The Sunnyvale Downtown Association worked with the city to close Murphy Avenue so that it's only, a pedestrian only zone. And I think it's been really great, and I think I've heard a lot of positive comments from people. And as far as closing Murphy Avenue, it's been talked about for years, and finally we tried it. There were businesses downtown that were always worried that their business would drop off because of closing, Murphy Avenue. The positive things is it's actually made it even more lively. I think downtown historic Murphy has been a really great experience, and so we've had to try it because of COVID, and we did have to shut it down when we moved back into the regional lockdown in the beginning and end of November, December, but now that we've opened back up and people are out enjoying the fresh air, the good weather that we have here in the Bay Area only makes that sort of environment that much better. So, it isn't final yet, and the Downtown Association needs to come back to the city, but in all my discussions with them, they're ready to do that once we're kind of out of COVID, and we're sure that we're not going to be locking down again anytime soon. When it was locking down, when they could only do delivery and takeout, the restaurants actually preferred so that people could pull up in front and they could just deliver right outside the restaurant. So if you like it, please tell your businesses, whatever business you're attending, how much you like it. I think this is going to be one of the positive things to come out of COVID at the end of the day. I had several people always ask, how can I volunteer with the city? And so, Sunnyvale's boards and commissions is one of the best ways that you can do because to help the city, because it provides citizen input on policies and issues affecting everyone in our community. And so, and that was how I got involved with the city. I got on the planning commission back in 2004 and was there for many years before deciding that ultimately I look at being on council, being mayor is community service. I wish it was a full-time job that paid at least full-time, but it's a volunteer way to give back to your community. And it's about a 4-year term to be on a board and commission, and you're appointed. So you go through an interview process, but right now recruitment's underway for almost every one of our boards and commissions has openings. So the Art Commission, the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advocacy Commission, the Board of Building Code Appeals, the Board of Library Trustees, the Heritage Preservation Commission, the Housing and Human Services Commission, Parks and Rec Commission, the Personnel Board, Planning Commission, and Sustainability Commission all have open positions right now. So if you ever wanted to get involved, and a lot of this has to do with, we have multiple people that are finishing, a 4-year term, so you can do 2 4-year terms. And so we have a lot of people that are finishing their 8 years on different commissions at the end of June. And so this is why we have a very big recruitment process going on right now. The application deadline is due the end of April, Friday, April 3rd at 5 p.m. So go to the city's website. search for boards and commissions, and you can see the applications online and sign up, and then turn those in, and hopefully, whatever your interest, conceivably that applies to one of the boards and commissions that we have. So looks like we're pretty much ran out of time as far as this week is concerned. So let me go ahead and wrap up. I want to thank you again for joining me this week. It's really good. I just want to say I'm proud of Sunnyvale's response to the pandemic. Life continues to be difficult. New issues come up, but your actions and your responses really do make a difference. When you're out, wear your mask, get your vaccine. When it's your time, continue to help others, especially during these trying times. I'm happy to see residents pulling together to help others in need. Whether or not it's giving baked goods to your neighbors, mowing your neighbor's lawn, just providing. I see boxes of toys for kids to share, books, or canned goods and masks out in front of people's houses, just to share for those in need that might need a little help out. So if you're out on a walk, wave, say hello to friends, say hello to strangers. People miss that social interaction. Sunnyvale will emerge from this as a stronger community. We're in this together, and we'll get through this together. Thanks for listening. If you're celebrating Easter, have a good Easter celebration this weekend. But to everyone, please wear your mask, stay safe, and have a good week. Goodbye. Take care.